Irina was exhausted and sank down on the sofa, feeling how the aching pain in her lower back was responding after a long working day. The apartment, though tastefully furnished, pressed on her with its mortgage weight. Mortgage, food, utility bills, clothes. My parents are going on vacation at my salary, and my husband barked. You were completely insolent, but after 10 minutes, he was leaving the house with a suitcase. Before we continue, write which country you are watching the video from. Irina didn't mind because she knew that finding a job right away doesn't always work out, but every time she saw where these leftover earnings went, her annoyance increased. Today, Sergey was talking very animatedly on the phone after locking himself in the bathroom. He called it looking for himself, and when he came out, a satisfied smile was on his face. Sergey was a successful programmer who took on the entire family household on her own. Irina remained silent when her mother called, seemingly to make excuses and ask for help, saying that she had a problem with the dacha. She knew that something was wrong with the dacha, so she had to buy new seedlings, fertilizer, and possibly pay for master services. Of course, all of this was done at Sergey's expense, so Irina went into the kitchen and opened the refrigerator, which was half empty as usual, and she needed to go to the store, but she was exhausted. Lately, everything has been handed to her with great difficulty, turned into an endless vicious circle. Maybe we should order pizza? She suggested, trying to sound as neutral as possible. Sergey shrugged his shoulders. Maybe only I don't have much money right now. Irina sighed. Of course, not all the money went to Margarita Alexeyevna, his mother, as usual. She suddenly realized how tired she was of this never-ending one-sided game. She recalled how it all started, when Sergey seemed so promising, full of ideas and ambitions. But over time, something broke. Margarita Alexeyevna merely fueled the fire by whining about life and demanding her son's attention, while she also lost interest in life and shifted all responsibility onto herself. You know, she responded, attempting to seem even. Sergey gave her a startled look and said, I can't take it anymore. I'm tired. From everything, Irina said. Tired of what? Sergey remained silent, unsure of how to respond, accustomed to the fact that Irina always did everything. From the fact that I'm the only one carrying everything. From the fact that you constantly help Mom, forgetting about me. From the fact that I feel like a stranger here. Irina said, I think we need to change something, looking him in the eyes. If we don't, we'll just destroy each other. Sergey scowled and said that everything needed to be changed, starting with our finances and ending with our relationship with your mother. Irina fell silent, waiting for his response, but he remained silent as if considering everything she said. She knew that this conversation would not be easy, but she couldn't keep quiet any longer. She had to tell him everything. Irina felt a wave rise inside of her, scorching and unstoppable, as the phone rang. She came home after a difficult day, dreaming of a quiet evening, maybe with a movie and a cup of tea, but reality, as usual, proved to be far from ideal. A crumpled check from a restaurant was lying casually on the kitchen table. The amount was impressive. What is this? She inquired. Sergey tried to remain composed after speaking with his mother, but he was already fuming on the inside. And did they celebrate Mommy's birthday? His voice had that same intonation that Irina detested the most, a mix of condescension and justification, as if he was doing her a favor by letting her pay for Mom's banquets. Irina felt as though she had been punched in the gut because they celebrated with my salary and without me, but what's wrong with Mom's anniversary? She wasn't going to throw a party for herself. She clenched her fists to avoid yelling at Sergey, but we agreed we have mortgage bills. Irina's voice trembled, offended to tears, squeezed like a lemon, and Sergey rolled his eyes. Oh, it continues forever. You make a tragedy out of everything, Mom. This is sacred, you should understand, and my parents are not sacred. Have you ever considered me that I get tired too? Well, you earn more, and you feel sorry for me. Sergey spoke as if it was about some trivial matter about buying a new light bulb, and not about the amount on which you could live for a month. When Sergey sat down at the computer again in the evening, Irina opened her laptop and went to the website of a travel company. After a long time of choosing, comparing prices, and reading reviews, she finally found what she was looking for: tours to Turkey. She couldn't contain herself, and everything that had been building up for months suddenly exploded in her head, forming a bold plan that she knew was crazy and could have unpredictable consequences, but she couldn't live as before. She used her salary card to pay for the vouchers, emptying the account nearly to zero so that they would feel like kings and forget all the problems and worries they had long dreamed of. Sergei didn't even realize what she was doing because he was too engrossed in his game. Irina smiled and said, "Let him play soon. He will find out what reality is in the morning at breakfast." Irina Narakita carelessly threw it on the table. "Printed trip package vouchers. What is this?" "These are travel packages for my parents to Turkey," Irina said calmly while sipping her coffee. Sergei snorted. "What travel packages? Where did you get the money from? You said we had a mortgage and all that." Irina looked him in the eye, "And I went and bought it with my salary." Sergei blushed. "Are you completely crazy? You spent all your money on some nonsense. What about us and what about Mom?" Irina shrugged her shoulders and asked. Irina sighed. "No, Sergei, I did it for myself. I don't want to live by your rules anymore since you give your salary to Mom, and I give mine to my parents. Everything is fair." Sergei leaped up from his chair, knocking over his coffee. "You've become impudent. I won't let you talk to me like that. I'm the boss here." Irina looked at him calmly, no longer afraid of his anger. Something had changed inside her, and she felt her confidence return. Irina said softly, "You are not the master, Sergei. You are just a man who lives at my expense and listens to his mother." Sergei's face was distorted with anger. "Who are you to say that? I will do it right now." He swung his hand at her, but Irina did not flinch. Instead, she looked him firmly in the eyes, ready to fight back. Sergei lowered his hand, and he saw in her eyes not fear but determination. "Will you regret this?" he whispered and hurried into the room, and Irina heard him open the closet with a bang. She didn't bother him. She just stood in the kitchen and waited. A few minutes later, Sergei showed up on the threshold holding a stuffed suitcase. He yelled, "I'm leaving and you'll still remember me. Without me you'll be lost," and slammed the door. Irina didn't stop him. She didn't say anything or cry, and there was nothing inside. Of course, it was a seething, raging cocktail due to resentment, disappointment, and exhaustion, but she wasn't going to show it to Sergei so he would believe he had won and comfort himself by pretending to be Irina. Would collapse in the absence of his brilliant presence. She started by changing the passwords for his internet bank, mobile bank, personal account, and public utilities website. She recalled how Sergei had asked her for access codes under the guise of convenience, but that convenience had ended along with his right to dispose of her money. She then disconnected his number from all online payments, stopped the automatic write-offs for his subscriptions to sports channels and online games, and let Sergei figure it out on his own while sitting in a small. He called his mother every 5 minutes in the kitchen of her apartment, first threatening her and then pleading with her. When Irina didn't answer, she simply put the phone on silent and tossed it in the far corner of the sofa. Margarita Alexeyevna triumphantly gave her son tea and pies, telling him that she had a vision of herself thinking that money would decide everything and that she would live alone, howl, and crawl to you on her knees. "You are my gold," she said, but she didn't finish, just curled her lips in contemptuously. He was certain that Irina would not survive a week without his male support, who would screw in her light bulb, nail up the shelf, take out the trash, and generally show her love. He had no idea that Irina had already liberated herself from these domestic responsibilities. She had called a service husband for an hour, who swiftly and effectively fixed all the small issues in the apartment. She had taken out the trash on her own, enjoying the quiet in the empty entrance, and she had acquired self-love long before she met Sergei. She called her parents' number to make sure that everything was under control financially. "Mom, Dad, how are you?" Her voice sounded unusually happy. "Araka, daughter, how are you? How is Sergei?" Her mother's voice was anxious, as she always felt when something was wrong with Irina. Irina exhaled and made up her mind. "Mom, do you remember I told you about the vacation that I wanted to send you on vacation? Of course, daughter, but now is not the time. You have a mortgage. Sergey is looking for a job, and her mother hesitated not to burden her daughter. There was silence in the receiver, but then Irina heard her mother's sobs. Araka, daughter, thank you. You are such a smart girl, so strong. We are so proud of you. There's no reason, Mom. It's me who should thank you for always being there for me and supporting me in everything. I have everything stable from work. I'm pulling the mortgage. Sergey decided to live separately, so I'm sending you tickets and hotel vouchers tomorrow. Everything is paid for, so you can relax, enjoy the sun, sea, and delicious food. You deserve it. Irina felt a surge of energy after talking to her parents. She turned on her favorite music, opened a bottle of wine, and sat on the balcony, taking in the sunset as the city spread out before her. That taught me to be strong. Now it's your turn to relax and enjoy life. She felt a lump in her throat and tears welled up in her eyes, but they were tears of joy and relief for the first time in a long time. Margarita Alexeyevna continued to whisper to Sergey, "You must fight for your happiness. You must bring her back, because she will be lost without you." Sergey, intoxicated by maternal support and confident in his irresistibility, was formulating a plan to bring Irina back, but he was unaware that she had already gone so far ahead that she was no longer the woman who was willing to tolerate his infantilism and maternal influence. She was sparkling with lights at that moment, and she raised her glass and made a toast to a new life for her own freedom. Almost immediately after Sergey's departure, Irina filed for divorce. There was no need to delay. She was fully aware that he would not change, and that his reliance on his mother was a deeply ingrained habit that he would not want to break, and she no longer wanted to argue with him about it. Because she was exhausted, she sought legal counsel from her colleague Oleg. A few weeks ago, Oleg, who is usually sensitive and perceptive, became aware of her depression. Instead of probing her psyche or asking questions, he offered to aid if she will be required, and Irina was sitting in the office of an elderly but highly capable woman who was carefully going over the documents she had brought. "Is the mortgage registered in your name?" the lawyer asked, adjusting her glasses. "Yes," she said, "and all payments were taken out of my account." "Okay, and the receipts and statements confirming your expenses for maintaining the apartment have been preserved?" Irina nodded. She was meticulous and kept all the receipts, and statements on the credit card because she felt they would be very helpful and would make things much easier, the lawyer asked in detail. "I understand," the lawyer said when Irina finished. "Unfortunately, such situations are quite common, but in your case, considering your income and the lack of financial participation from your husband, we have every chance to achieve that." Irina talked calmly and emotionally about her relationship with Sergey, his income, and his contribution to the family budget, but inside everything was still boiling. She talked about the constant transfers of money to her mother, his unwillingness to look for a permanent job, and her fatigue from being the only provider. The main reason why Irina didn't want to share the apartment where she had spent so much money and effort was because she didn't want Sergey and his mother to benefit from her work. Meanwhile, Sergey, convinced of his own rightness and encouraged by Margarita Alexeyevna, tried to return. He called and wrote messages to her at work, first pleading for forgiveness and swearing that his love would change, then accusing her of betraying him and saying that she had ruined his life, saying, "You will regret it." "Irina," he yelled into the phone receiver, "you are nothing without me. You will die without my male hands." Irina just hung up, feeling both disgusted and amused at the same time. She had long thought that he needed her and that he couldn't handle life without her, but now she realized that it was all a lie made up by her own need to be needed and strong. Sergey persisted, filing a lawsuit for property division and demanding half of the apartment's price. Margarita Alexeyevna was ecstatic, certain that Irina would panic, give up everything, and make concessions, just to avoid a scandal, but Irina was not scared. She was prepared to fight, gathered all the required paperwork, enlisted the help of a lawyer, and waited for the trial. On the day of the hearing, Sergey appeared uncertain and perplexed next to him, as usual. Margarita Alexeyevna was also present in the courtroom, berating Irina with an angry expression, and Oleg's presence gave her confidence. The judge listened carefully to both sides, and Sergei appeared confused when he was testifying about some investments that he allegedly made in. Margarita Alexeyevna attempted to interrupt, yell, and accuse Irina of all mortal sins, but the judge firmly suppressed her attempts. When it was Irina's turn, she spoke calmly and confidently and produced all the required paperwork, including a mortgage agreement, bank statements, and receipts for the purchase of furniture and equipment. She also requested to call witnesses, her friends, and co-workers who could attest that Sergei did not contribute financially to the upkeep of one of. The witness, an accountant from Irina's workplace, provided a certificate of Sergei's income for the previous few years, indicating that his earnings were low and inconsistent. The judge carefully considered all of the witnesses and then left for a meeting, during which Irina waited anxiously for the judge to return and make the decision. The court decided to leave the apartment in Irina's possession because it was established that she was the one who paid the mortgage and covered all of the costs. When housing maintenance Sergei's demands for property division were denied, Margarita Alexeyevna erupted from her chair and began yelling and swearing at Irina. Sergei stood with his head down like a battered dog, and Irina felt not a sense of pride but rather sympathy for a man who would never be able to grow up and be on his own. After the hearing, Irina returned to her apartment and felt a remarkable sense of relief from a long-standing burden. She glanced around the familiar walls and furniture. Each detail brought back memories. But, first of all, Irina took a long-awaited vacation. Work, though cherished, had recently become a routine means of survival, but now that the financial stranglehold had been released, she could afford a break and a reboot. She made the decision to go to a small European country that she had long dreamed of, with narrow streets, ancient castles, and cozy cafes. She also purchased tickets, booked a hotel, and, one evening, while enjoying a cup of aromatic tea on the balcony, Irina felt energized and at peace. She looked around the apartment, which was filled with flowering plants, flickering lights, and garlands. It was then that she realized she had made her own world, free of disappointments, worries, and grievances. She felt like the mistress of her life, capable of everything. Suddenly, the doorbell rang, and Irina looked in surprise through the peephole on the threshold, where Oleg, her friend and colleague, was standing. "Hello, Irina," he said. "I thought you could use a little good humor." Irina smiled back, knowing that Oleg had been sympathetic to her for a while, but she hadn't noticed it before. Now that her heart was free, she felt an interest in him. "Thank you, Oleg," she said. "It's very nice. Come in." I was just about to have some tea when Oleg entered the apartment and looked around. "It's very cozy here," he said. "Yes, I decided to update the interior a little." After Irina responded that she wanted to create a calm and cozy atmosphere, they went to the balcony and sat at a table. Oleg made tea and placed the flowers in a vase. "How are you feeling?" Oleg said, "I am very happy for you." Irina said, "I am freed from the burden of the past and am ready for a new life." "After everything that happened, I feel much better now," he asked. "You are a strong and independent woman. You deserve happiness." Irina looked at Oleg and smiled in his eyes, sensing genuine care and support, and feeling a connection between them. "More than just friendship, thank you, Oleg. She said you are also a very good person, and I value our friendship." They spent a long time drinking tea and discussing everything on the planet. Irina told Oleg about her plans for the future, and Oleg listened to her carefully and helped her with everything. That night, Irina realized that she had friends, parents, and co-workers who loved and appreciated her, and she realized that life goes on and that there were many exciting things that awaited her. After Oleg left, Irina went out onto the balcony once more and looked at starry sky and felt content, knowing that everything would be all right because she was free, independent, and full of hope. Irina closed her eyes, smiled, and took a deep breath, feeling as though she was breathing deeply for the first time in a long time. Peace and harmony ruled her heart, and she was prepared for the new chapter that had begun in her life.